Hi, so today I'm going to show you how to make one of these gorgeous half and half knot headbands. I got the idea of my half and half scrunchies, which I've already done a YouTube tutorial on. So it's the same concept, just with a headband. I absolutely love them. You can pop two different fabrics together. I've done this one in cotton fabric, but you could do it in many different fabrics. So whatever you've got going, whatever you've got spare, it's a great way to use scrap fabrics. Take a look at my Instagrams to see more of my makes. You will need an iron and ironing board, a sewing machine with a thread of your choice in, some fabric scissors, a headband, a marker pen or tailor's chalk, a ruler, some pins and two different pieces of fabric which are 29 centimetres in length by 13 centimetres in width. Optional extras consist of a fabric glue and a knitting needle. So as you can see, I've got my two fabric pieces pre-cut. So what you need to do for a start is put them both right sides together, like so. And then just pop a pin in one short edge to hold it together. And we are just going to straight stitch straight down here to join the two pieces of fabric together to create a whole length, which will give us the basis for our half and half headband. So I've got the fabric placed ready in the machine. Remember to do a few back stitches at the start and the end to stop the thread unravelling. There we are. So now you just need to trim the excess thread and trim the seam allowance. I've given you a 1 centimetre seam allowance on the measurements, but you can make the seam allowance a bit bigger or smaller if you would like. So as you can see, we've now sort of got one full length sort of piece of fabric, so it's all together, just sort of joined at the middle. So next we can get on with actually sort of making the headband structure. So if you fold it right sides together lengthways, like so, and I'm just going to pop a pin in the middle to keep it in place. And then the next part is where your fabric marker, tailor's chalk, or I might just use pins on the fabric to mark out where we are going to leave some gaps so that we can turn the fabric the right way round and thread the headband through. So 4 centimetres from the start of one side, you're going to mark a line, or like I say, I'm going to pop a pin through just because of how dark the fabric is. The pins remind me a lot easier. So I've put my first pin in 4 centimetres from the beginning. I'm then going to leave a 3 centimetre gap. This is so that I can get my headband through the gap. As you can see, I've chosen quite a thick, wide headband. So if you've got a smaller headband, you can reduce this gap to 2 centimetres, 1.5, whatever you feel comfortable with leaving the gap size as. Just make sure you have enough room to turn the fabric out. So yeah, 3 centimetres across. Then we're going to leave another set, so 20 centimetres from the start. So I'm going to pop a pin in 20 centimetres along and another one at 23 to give me that 3 centimetres gap. And then again, going from the other end, we are going to do another 20 centimetres. So if I pop one pin in here and then 3 centimetres along from that, we pop another pin in. There we go. So like I say, either pins or markers, is up to you what you feel comfortable doing. I've opted for the pins purely because the black's obviously quite dark, so it will really remind me that I need to leave those gaps in the fabric. So next we're going to straight stitch this sort of all the way along the top. Again, you've got about 1 centimetre seam allowance. When I reach each of these pins, I will do a few back stitches and a few forward, and then lift the needle up, sort of jump over, and again a few forward and back, so that you've closed the thread off every time we need a gap so that it won't unravel. Okay, so I've got it ready in the machine, so remember to do a few back stitches at the start and the end, and when you reach each gap, just to make sure it definitely won't come undone. Like so. I've reached that pin and I'm going to do a few back and forward. Lift the foot up and pull it through, and start again doing a few forward and a few back. And there we have it. So now you need to remove all of the pins, or if you've got markings, that's fine. They'll either be iron off markings, or they'll just be a bit of tailor's chalk, which will just sort of rub off anyway. And then you need to trim all of the threads, so even where you've left the gap, make sure you take those out. Now we've got the fabric like so, we're going to give it a good iron and a press. So what you'll need to do is pop the seam sort of along the middle. This is going to be the underside of the headband, and we are going to iron out that flat like so. I'll show you on the ironing board. As you can see, I'm just giving that a real good press and steam to make sure it's all nice and flat and that the seam is straight down the middle. Now that that's ironed, it's time to do a few more markings. So you want to do the same either side. So if you measure 1 centimetre from the top, so again you'll need your sort of marker pen, tailor's chalk, or pins. I've got this fabulous iron off pen, which is a miracle worker, and I absolutely love it. So I'm just making sure I can kind of really see that line. And then both sides you want to measure 6.5 centimetres down. So popped one marking here, and I will do the same here. And then I find it easier to draw a line from that marking to the first centimetre marking we did. So I'll do that again on both sides, just so that gives me a proper straight line to follow when I'm sewing. So you've kind of got a triangular line. Obviously this fabric is quite hard to see it on the video most likely, but I'll be able to tell when I'm sewing. So again, the exact same, the other side. There we go. So now we are going to sew along both of those two lines that we've just created the triangle with. So I'll start with a few back stitches, go forward. I tend to do a few back stitches when I reach the top of the triangle as well, just so that when I'm turning it out, I usually use a knitting needle to sort of get the point more prominent. I find it reinforces the stitching. And then the same back down here and a few back stitches to finish it. So I've got that ready in my machine, so a few forward and back stitches, and straight down to the point. I'm doing a few back again just to reinforce it. So put the needle down, turn it, go forward, back, and repeat on the other side. So now that I've got both ends, sort of the triangles both sewn in, I'm just going to trim the threads and the excess fabric off. There we go, so I've trimmed them both down. I've done sort of a straight line across there and cut both sides just to make sure that will be nice and easy where the point is. If you wanted to adapt this pattern a little bit, if you're not as keen on the points and you'd rather have a more square end, you could do that. You just, where the 1 centimetre line is, if you leave that a bit longer, and rather than going so triangle, you can just angle it slightly. It's completely up to you. I just personally quite like the more pointed ends. So now we're going to turn the fabrics the right sides round. So obviously, as you can see, I've got a knitting needle. That's just sort of an optional extra to help you when you turn out, really get the points through. So you've obviously got 3 gaps. So your first one sort of there, you'll have another one here and another one sort of here. So you just sort of slowly bring the fabric from the wrong side through to the right side, flipping it over. There we go, so we've now got the fabrics right sides together. Like I say, I'm just going to use a knitting needle to help me really sort of point the ends out, but if you don't have one, don't worry, that's completely optional. You can just sort of continue pushing with your fingers and moving the fabric around. There we go. And the other end. There we are. So we've now completely turned that right side out. So now we need to give it another iron and a press so it's completely flat. So if you make sure your seam sort of on the points are kind of really pushed out to the side, you can give that a roll to sort of help you. And we're going to iron and steam it flat. So also make sure that the seam on the underneath is in the middle once again, just to help the positioning and when you pop the headband in. So again, just giving it a real good iron and press. So it's all nice and ironed, nice and flat. So what you're going to do now is try and put the knot in the middle of the headband. So just sort of flip the fabric through, and don't worry about doing it too sort of straight or perfect right now, because obviously we've got to get the headband through. Just make sure that both the sort of the tops are the same way and the bottom where the seam and the holes are the same way. So now we're going to start with the headband threading. So where you've got your first sort of entrance hole, you're going to take the headband, thread it up and through. And then you'll need to find the next hole, which is here. So bring the fabric out, but then you want to thread the headband under the bottom part of the knot, so that you won't see that sort of sticking out underneath. It will be covered by the lovely bottom of the knot. So I'm going to thread that through. When we reach the other side, you'll need to find the other opening. You may need to move your knot around a little bit. Here we go. And then you can start to thread the whole thing through. There we go. So once you've completely got the fabric through, you might have to sort of rejig the knot to the kind of shape that you would like and desire. And you just keep sort of moving it around until you're happy with the placement. And as you can see on the underneath, you can't see the headband because it's covered by the bottom of the knot. So there we go. So there's that. So here's where your optional extra comes in. If you've got fabric glue and if you would like to sort of close this bottom hole, we can just sort of glue along the edge of one of the sides and pop it together and leave it to dry for a little while. If you don't want to glue it, that's absolutely fine. you can just leave it, and that way you can replace the band if you ever need to, or if you want to change the fabric or anything like that, you can get the band out quite easily. I personally quite like gluing them just to give it more of a finished look, but it's entirely up to you. Simply sort of pop a little bit of glue along one of the edges all the way down, as you can see, and then just sort of stick them together. Don't worry about sort of the white colour at the moment because it dries completely clear, so you won't be able to see that. And then just leave it for a while to set. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you really liked the video. If you do have a go at making one, I would love to see the outcome, so please send them to me on my social media. Happy sewing!